You are standing in a grocery store. Nothing dramatic is happening. No sirens, no explosion, no villain in a suit. Just fluorescent lights, a half-full cart, and a payment terminal waiting for you to tap your card. You already added it up in your head 3 times. Bread, eggs, milk, chicken, coffee. A few things you did not plan to buy, because life does not care about your budget when your kid needs lunch snacks or your apartment runs out of detergent. The cashier says the total. For 1 second, your face stays calm, but inside, your body does the math before your brain can finish. Rent is coming. The electric bill already hit. Gas is low. The paycheck lands Friday, but today is Tuesday. And suddenly, the question is not, can I afford groceries? The question is, can anything go wrong before Friday? That is what life feels like at the bottom of the emergency fund ladder. It is not just about being broke. It is about living with no shock absorbers. This is educational storytelling, not personal financial advice. The numbers in this video are simplified examples, because real life depends on your income, expenses, family, location, and risk. But the feeling is real. At $0, your entire safety net is timing. The timing of your paycheck, the timing of your bills, the timing of whether your car breaks before or after payday, the timing of whether your body gets sick when you can afford to miss work. And when your life depends on timing, you are not really stable. You are just lucky on a schedule. At $0, life does not give you warnings. It gives you ultimatums. A tire goes flat, and suddenly the whole week has a new boss. The tire decides whether you get to work. Work decides whether you get paid. The paycheck decides whether rent clears. Rent decides whether your landlord sends a reminder. One small rubber circle on the side of the road somehow reaches into every corner of your life. That is what $0 does. It connects everything. Nothing stays small. A parking ticket becomes grocery stress. A doctor visit becomes credit card debt. A broken phone becomes missed shifts, missed messages, missed chances. Even a small mistake feels expensive, because there is no space between the mistake and the consequence. At this level, you do not really plan. You react. You move money from one place to another and hope the timing works. You delay the bill that screams the least. You answer unknown calls less often. You tell yourself you will deal with it next week, because next week still has imaginary money in it. Then comes $500. $500 does not make you rich. It does not solve housing. It does not erase debt. It does not protect you from losing a job. But $500 does something powerful when you have been living at zero. It interrupts the collapse. At $500, a small emergency is still painful. But it may not become a full disaster. The tire still annoys you. The urgent bill still frustrates you. The surprise prescription still makes you angry. But now there is a moment where you can breathe before you bleed. You can pay for one thing. One ordinary thing that used to feel like a trapdoor under your feet. $500 is not freedom. It is one locked door between you and panic. But the door is thin. A utility bill can break it. A school expense can break it. A car battery can break it. And suddenly you are back at zero, but with a new kind of grief. Because now you know what breathing felt like. Then comes $1,000. This is the number that has lived in American money advice for years. A starter emergency fund. A first milestone, a small shield, and emotionally, $1,000 is powerful. Not because it can handle everything. It cannot. A serious car repair can erase it. A medical deductible can laugh at it. A missed paycheck can swallow it. But $1,000 changes the way ordinary problems enter your body. The same bill arrives, but your heart does not drop as far. The same warning light appears on the dashboard, but your first thought is not immediate disaster. The same unexpected expense hits, but you have a move. That is what the first $1,000 really buys. A move. Not victory, not comfort, not full safety. A move. And when you have spent enough time at zero, having one move can feel like power. At $2,500, something quiet begins to change. Not your whole life, not your job, not the rent. Not the cost of groceries, insurance, gas, or medical bills. But something changes inside the month. The month stops feeling quite as sharp. A small emergency no longer has the same power to ruin the next 30 days. At $0, a surprise bill is a threat. At $500, it is a wound. At $1,000, it is a problem you may be able to solve. But at $2,500, it becomes something different. It becomes annoying. And annoying is a beautiful word when you have lived in crisis. Annoying means the car repair does not automatically become credit card debt. Annoying means the dentist bill does not automatically become rent stress. Annoying means your checking account gets hit, but your whole identity does not. Then comes $5,000. And $5,000 is where many people notice their body changing before their budget does. You sleep a little differently. You open your email a little sooner. You look at bills with less dread. You still do not like them. Nobody likes bills. But they no longer feel like monsters hiding in ordinary envelopes. At $5,000, your emergency fund starts doing something a paycheck alone cannot do. It gives you recovery time. If a paycheck is delayed, you can survive the delay. If your car needs work, you do not have to choose the cheapest dangerous option just to keep moving. If your job cuts hours for 2 weeks, the ground still shakes, but it may not open completely. This is where a credit card starts becoming less of a life raft and more of a tool, not a solution, not free money, not a second income, just a tool you do not have to lean on as desperately. Because the person with no emergency fund often pays for emergencies twice. First, they pay the bill, then they pay the interest, then they pay the stress, then they pay the next month by having less room than before. That is how a small emergency becomes a long shadow. But at $5,000, the shadow gets shorter. At $10,000, the emergency fund begins to change shape. Before this level, it mostly protects you from things. A flat tire, a medical bill, a broken phone, a missed paycheck, a bad week. But around $10,000, the fund starts doing more than protecting you from emergencies. It starts protecting you from desperation. And desperation's expensive. Desperation makes people accept bad loans. Desperation makes people stay in jobs that drain them. Desperation makes people sign contracts they do not understand. Desperation makes people say yes when every part of them wants to say no. At $10,000, you may not be rich. You may not even feel comfortable. But you have a different kind of power. You can pause. That pause matters. A bill arrives, and you can read it instead of fearing it. A job becomes unstable, and you can think before making your next move. A car repair comes up, and you can compare options instead of choosing whatever gets you back on the road by tomorrow morning. $10,000 buys the space between pressure and reaction, and that space changes people. Then comes $20,000. For some people, $20,000 sounds extreme. For others, it sounds like the first number that actually makes sense. Because 3 to 6 months of basic expenses is not what it used to be. In many American households, once you add housing, food, transportation, insurance, utilities, medical costs, and debt minimums, 1 month can be shockingly expensive. $1,000 might be a starter shield, $5,000 might stop several smaller emergencies, $10,000 might give you breathing room. But $20,000 can be the first level where a person thinks, if something serious happens, I might not immediately fall apart. Not definitely, not forever, not in every city, not for every family. But for many people, this is where the fund starts feeling like time. Time to look for work without accepting the first terrible option. Time to recover from a medical event without every hour becoming a financial calculation. Time to move out of a bad housing situation. Time to think. And time is one of the most underrated forms of wealth. Then comes $50,000. At this level, you are buying patience. You are buying negotiation power. You are buying the ability to not make a permanent decision because of a temporary emergency. A layoff is still painful, but it is not immediate ruin. A medical bill is still frustrating, but it may not become a spiral. A major repair still hurts, but it does not automatically rewrite the year. But this is also where another truth appears. More cash can create safety, but too much fear can turn safety into a cage. Because once someone has built a large emergency fund, they may become afraid to touch it, even when the emergency is real. They may keep stacking cash far beyond what their life reasonably requires, not because it is part of a plan, but because fear keeps moving the finish line. And this is where emergency savings becomes psychological. The question is no longer only, do you have enough money? The question becomes, do you trust the money to do the job you saved it for? Because an emergency fund is not a museum. It is not there to be admired. It is there to absorb impact. Then comes $100,000. At this level, the emergency fund becomes something almost unreal. Not because $100,000 makes someone rich in every part of America. It does not. A long layoff, a serious medical situation, a family crisis, or a failed move can still burn through money faster than people want to admit. But emotionally, $100,000 in emergency savings feels different. It is no longer just a cushion. It is a fortress of liquidity. One flat tire does not matter. One broken appliance does not matter. One delayed paycheck does not matter. One ugly bill does not get to walk into your life and act like it owns you. At this level, most ordinary emergencies lose their power to humiliate you. And that word matters. Humiliate. Because a lot of financial pain is not only about loss, it is about the way loss makes you feel small. It is asking for an extension. It is explaining yourself to a stranger. It is borrowing money from someone who now knows too much. It is pretending you forgot your wallet, when really your card might decline. At $100,000, many of those positions disappear. You can pay, you can wait, you can leave, you can repair, you can let a bad month be a bad month, instead of the beginning of a financial identity crisis. But this is where the final reveal begins. Because most people think the ladder ends with peace. They imagine the number gets bigger and the fear gets smaller until one day fear is gone. But that is not always what happens. Sometimes the number grows, and the fear simply changes clothes. At $0, the fear says, what if something happens? At $1,000, it says, what if this is not enough? At $10,000, it says, what if I lose it? At $50,000, it says, what if I need more? And at $100,000, fear can whisper something even stranger. What if I am still not safe? That is the part nobody likes to admit. Money can protect your life faster than it can heal your memory. If you spent years living close to the edge, your body remembers. It remembers the declined card. It remembers the overdraft. It remembers the bill you opened in secret. It remembers the shame of needing help. So the real question was never only, how much should you save? The darker question was this: how much cash does it take before your nervous system finally believes you are safe? And the answer is different for everyone. For one person, it might be $1,000, because they have never had even that. For another, it might be $5,000, because that is enough to stop ordinary chaos. For a family with high rent, kids, medical needs, or one income, $20,000 might feel like the first real breath. For someone who survived layoffs, debt, illness, or instability, even $100,000 may not immediately quiet the alarm. So the real number is not only financial, it is psychological. Your nervous system starts to believe you are safe when the next emergency no longer has the power to humiliate you, not inconvenience you, not annoy you, not frustrate you, humiliate you. That is the line. Because life will still happen. Money does not stop storms. It does not make cars immortal. It does not make employers loyal. It does not make bodies painless. It does not make rent gentle. But money can change where you are standing when the storm arrives. Without an emergency fund, you face the storm in the street. With a small emergency fund, you find a doorway. With a real emergency fund, you get behind a locked door. With a large emergency fund, you can hear the rain without believing every drop is coming for you. So here are the 3 takeaways. First, an emergency fund is liquidity, not wealth on paper. Money in a retirement account, a house, or an investment may matter. But if the car breaks tonight, or rent is due tomorrow, wealth you cannot easily access may not calm the situation in time. Second, the first dollars do not buy luxury. They buy silence from panic. $500 might not change how your life looks. $1,000 might not impress anyone. But those first dollars change the sound of an emergency. They give you a second to think. And sometimes that second is where dignity begins. Third, the goal is not to hoard money forever. The goal is to stop letting every emergency negotiate your life for you. Because when you have no buffer, emergencies negotiate everything. Your interest rate, your job choices, your sleep, your relationships, your self-respect. But when you build a buffer, even a small one, the negotiation changes. Life can still make demands, but it does not get the only voice in the room. So maybe the question is not, what is the perfect emergency fund? Maybe the better question is, what level would make you sleep differently? $1,000? $5,000? $20,000? $100,000? Or is it not a number yet, but the feeling of finally opening your banking app without your stomach dropping? Leave a comment with the emergency fund level that would change your life the most. Not the number that sounds impressive, the number that would make your shoulders drop. Money cannot stop the storm, but it can decide whether you face it from the street or from behind a locked door.